Welcome to the Rising Tide Leadership Podcast, where we continue to simplify the complexities of your leadership journey. As always, remember that this year we're focusing on building sustainable influence. So make sure you guys are following along, listen to those podcasts, catch up if you haven't, sign up for our newsletter to stay up to date. As always, I'm Scott, and with me is our trusted leadership expert, Dr. Michael David Morales, known to many as Mo.
Hey, what's up, Scotty? It's good to be here, man. Let's do it.
Yes. So I'm amped about my story today because it is one of my home away from homes. And honestly, but we are getting into the nitty gritty of Costco today. So Jim Senegal, who is one of the co-founders of Costco, wasn't the kind of leader who really sat in a corner office and barked orders at people. So he believed that leadership started with listening, not talking. He made it a point to regularly walk the floors of the Costco warehouses, even had on the typical Costco vest, had a just normal Costco name tag, like didn't say co-founder or anything like that. But he made sure that he talked directly with employees. He talked to cashiers, stockers, managers, all of them, and asked them what was working and what wasn't. And more importantly, he listened to them. He didn't take a clipboard and nod politely. He stopped, he asked questions, and followed up on what people said. So if someone pointed out a process that was slowing them down or a product that wasn't selling, he took it very seriously. And he created an environment where employees felt safe giving honest feedback because they knew that their voices weren't just being heard, that they were actually going to be acted upon. And that listening first approach really extended how he communicated with everyone. He didn't just incorporate jargon or spin on things. He spoke plainly with respect, and as always, made sure that people understood not just what decisions were made, but also the why behind it. And it helped build enormous trust with those that he interacted with. When investors pressured him eventually to cut wages and benefits, he stood his ground. He told them flat out, if you hire good people and pay them well, they'll do great work, and that's how we're going to stay successful. His words were incredibly simple. Sure, we've heard them in various forms throughout our lives, but they were really backed by what he had heard from listening to thousands of employees over the years. Even now, in the time of economic uncertainty, Costco is one of the few businesses that is actually not touching any of their processes, not touching any of their pricing. But Senegal really showed that great communication doesn't just come from being a great speaker, but it comes from being a great listener. And his ability to connect with people at all levels really helped make Costco a company where employees felt valued and customers kept coming back. And I know today we are jumping into the power of listening first and just what a powerful tool that can ultimately be. And so, Mo, why don't you kind of lead us straight into kind of that first section for today?
Great opening story. Senegal really is a pioneer, much like one of your favorites, another CEO of a company called Starbucks. When you care about your people, it's going to show. Senegal, he loved retail from an early age. And so when you love what you do and you love the people that are part of that process and you value them as such, you're going to do big things. You touched on one of my favorite stories that he just wore a regular name tag like everybody else. If you were just a regular person at Costco, you would see him walking around, stocking shelves, doing whatever needed to be done. He was just a regular guy. That's what we all want to do. And you're right. He listened to people. The first point today is that very thing, which is the power of listening first. We always want to get a word in edgewise. We always have something to say. Let me ask our listeners this. When's the last time that you met somebody? You introduced themselves. 5 minutes later, you're talking to this person. You're thinking to yourself, I have no idea what this person's name is. You're already starting out on the wrong foot. And the best people that have worked with people over my life have been those who remember names. And there's just something about hearing your name, right? And so I guess the first action point that I would tell people before anything today is when you meet somebody, try to use their name 3 times within that conversation. So if I were to meet Scott, as I'm listening to Scott's story, I would say something like, wow, Scott, that sounds really cool that you are an athletic trainer. I've always been intrigued as a swimming coach on how athletic trainers do that. And then if we were talking more and then he were to be talking about his family, I'd say, wow, Scott, that's really cool that you and your family do X, Y, and Z over the summer. Every time you use somebody's name, it does 2 things. One, it lets them hear their name and they love that. The sweetest sound in the world is our own name. And the second thing is it's going to reinforce it for yourself. So let me ask you this, Scott. When's the last time that you forgot somebody's name when you first met somebody?
I'm gonna be really honest, like literally just the other day. So there was I had interacted with it, and the worst part was this wasn't my first time meeting this person. I'd met them a couple times before, and it was just one of those things where I, for the life of me, knew that I should know this person's name and had no idea what it was. And so I had to, right. Then I started to panic and I was trying to figure out ways of like, oh, is there someone close that I could introduce this person to so they'd have to say their name again?
Right, right.
But it happens, yeah, more often than I care to admit.
Well, it's funny that you say that. There's always a point of no return, right? Like you could forget, you could meet somebody and then meet them a week later, a month later, and then say, "Can you remind me your name?" You get to a point in a relationship where you think to yourself, "I should totally know this guy's name." Leaders, you cannot afford to not know people. It makes you look like you don't care. And leaders, you have to care. So back to our point. Listen first. Great leaders don't just talk. They listen, and they listen with intention. We're all about intentionality here. There's no time for you leaders to not be intentional. Active listening builds trust. It uncovers hidden insights that you wouldn't know about somebody, and it shows your team that you care and that they matter.
People really don't understand how important a name is. For instance, I have a friend who's always called by the shortened version of that name, but they don't actually like being called that. But it's one of those things where that's just what everybody defaults to. And so I try to make it a point to call them by their full name just because the power behind that. And, Dale Carnegie talks about it in How to Win Friends and Influence People as well. Just he's got a whole chapter dedicated to it
Yes,
about
it does.
how important it is to know someone's name and just how powerful that can be.
And going back to Dale Carnegie, really, leaders, that's the only book that you need. In fact, Dale Carnegie says in the introduction, this is the only leadership book that you will ever need. And Scott, is he wrong?
He's not wrong. He's not wrong.
Every book that I've ever read after that book has just been a reinforcement of something that Carnegie already said. And all of his chapters are in bite sizes. The chapters are in sections. So leaders, pick that book up and start learning people further than just what you need from them. Yes, they owe something to you because they work for the company or they're under your care, but you have to care about them. Leaders, who is somebody that you've gotten frustrated with over the past couple of weeks and that you need to go back and just ask them the question, hey, what's going on? And just shut your mouth and listen. And so if you want to be a leader that has the power of being able to listen first, think about this. Listening creates a psychological safety that's going to open up doors for you, that's going to give you deeper influence. You want your people to feel safe around you. You want them to think, hey, it's okay if I go to Scott because he's going to listen, he's going to hear me. Second of all is this. Most people don't even listen with the intent to understand. They're just waiting to reply. As soon as they say something, we're thinking, oh, I know what this person needs. Okay, be quiet so I can tell you. No, stop. Listen to people. That's what leaders do. And third is this. A leader who listens well is a leader who's going to be in tune with what matters most. My question that I would have for you on this point is, do you know what matters most in the lives of the people that you lead? Not what matters most for them at work, not what you hope matters for them to make you more successful in what you do, but what matters to them. Ask yourself this week, am I listening to respond or am I listening to understand?
Another question that really just popped into my head, that our leaders can ask themselves is, are you so focused on accomplishing your own goals that you're missing out on the opportunity to influence others? It's that hyper focus of, I want to get this accomplished. I want that person to do this. So I'm going to fake listening, kind of like what you were talking about, right? Like someone who doesn't really listen to the individual, but can't wait to get into their point. And, it's an opportunity for influence just missed. So, but to kind of transition us into this next point for today, one of my favorite quotes that I've ever heard Jocko Willink say. He said it when I got to see him live in Michigan a couple years ago now. But he took time answering a question and he answered it in one straight sentence. And all he said in response to this question about, influence and things was, listen more, talk less. And that was it. That's all he said. So Mo, why don't you help us dig into that next point?
That is a great quote. And it does lead exactly into this second point, which is speak when it matters, say what counts. One of my mentors told me this, Mo, you talk too much. Okay, I got it. So help me out here. What do I need to do then? How can I be better? And he told me something that I'll never forget. He said, Mo, You always need to mean what you say, but you always don't have to say what you mean. And what he was telling me there is think, be quiet, listen more, talk less, think about all the things that you're going to say. Make sure that they matter. Make sure that you really believe what you say. But just because you have an opinion doesn't mean you have to say it. So speak when it matters, say what counts. Jocko's right. He is a man of few words. He's a very direct person.
Mhm.
Back in the day, I had to confront one of my team leaders about a decision that was causing a division. So I could have danced around it. I planned what I wanted to say. I spoke calmly. I focused on what the mutual purpose was. And the last thing was this: I stayed curious. I didn't go in with intentions to say, man, this guy's causing divisions. I need to fix this. I need to nip it in the bud. What's your problem? I asked questions such as, how do you feel like this project's going? What do you think your people are getting out of this? What do you think that we need to do differently so that we can move to the next phase of this project? And the more I talked about that, this guy, I can just tell he was frustrated. It's not that he didn't care about what was going on. It's not that he wanted to cause division. It was he was frustrated because he knew we needed to get things done. And his leadership led at that point, Scott, it just wasn't high enough. And you know what I realized in that moment? I was frustrated with him when I really should have been frustrated with me. I was too busy, worried about what didn't matter. And up to that point, I was saying all the things that didn't count. So I had to step back and I had to figure out what matters in this instance, not just for the team, but also for this leader specifically. And when I got more of that background, I was able to empathize with him, and he ended up doing a great job. But I realized he wasn't the problem. I was the problem.
Mm. It's always so eye-opening when you're frustrated and trying to figure out exactly what is going on and you don't understand it. And then lo and behold, it's your problem.
Yeah, it
Just
is.
it's always so interesting when you get to that point. And I really feel like this point really connects with me really well. You know, one of my top strengths is woo. And it's a great strength to have. I absolutely love having it. But one of the pitfalls that comes with having woo as a strength is I am a talker. And I don't like awkward silences, or really not awkward silences. I don't like silence, and I like filling it. I like having conversation. And so oftentimes I find myself trying to fill in gaps with whatever mess of words that comes out of my mouth, rather than slowing down, formulating that solid thought and saying what I mean to, or what I need to say, or what should be said in the smallest amount of words possible.
Well, and if I could peel back the curtain a little bit for our audience, Scotty, first of all, what Scott's talking about there when he says woo is not woo, even though people with woo do like to say woohoo a lot. But woo stands for winning others over. And Scott does that well. He walks in the room, he's a big presence, he's got a big voice, he's got a big laugh, people love him. It's easy to love Scott, but Scott does not like silence. And so when there is silence, Scott fills that silence, and he's good at doing it because he's got great people skills. But when we have dealt, Scott, with some of the difficult situations in your life, I think that the best that you've ever done in dealing with difficult situations is when you have stepped back. And you may do this with other people, but you've done it with me before. You would send me a text message and say, "Hey Mo, here's the text that I want to send to this guy, to this girl. What do you think?" And we kind of work things out together. And I would say, "What do you mean by this?" Or, "How do you say this in less words?" And I would say 9 times out of 10 that because you've thought about it, put it on paper, decide what you're going to say before you were going to say it, it made the situation better. Would you agree?
Yes, I would definitely agree. 10 out of 10 times it frustrates me when I think I have the perfect thing to say and you're like, what about this? What about this? That tone seems a little aggressive. And I'm like, well, I thought it was fine. And being able to take that step back, and even in those intense situations, I often find myself trying to just take a really deep breath and kind of exhale slowly, which just buys me time. And again, that's just one of those things like, if I could revert back a little bit to being able to see Jocko live when he answered anybody's question in this Q&A, he never immediately had an answer. He always, and he's mic'd up, right? And so he always paused, and you could hear him take at least one full breath, if not more, formulate his response and give a very quick, succinct, and perfect response to the questions that were being asked of him. And so he had that so dialed in, being able to kind of take that and being able to formulate kind of really what we're talking about.
Well, you can imagine in his job as a former Navy SEAL, you have to be short, succinct, know what you're going to say, get the point across. Let me give our leaders out there a couple tips to use maybe if you're struggling with this. If you want to have clear and courageous communication, like we're talking about, think about this. When emotions run high and opinions differ, most people either avoid it or they explode because we don't like being challenged. Leaders, you have to change that. You have to invite that in, and you need to help people do that in a healthy way. Conflict is good. When we talk about the 5 dysfunctions of a team, the bottom level is always trust. It's about learning how to engage and engage in the right way. And the second thing is this: your influence is going to grow when you can navigate what we like to call high stakes dialogue in a clear and a succinct way with care. Leaders, you have to be able to know what matters, when it matters, and you need to know what you're bringing to that dialogue before you get there. Never say something that you haven't already thought about and vetted, because it sounds great in the moment, and then you realize later, gosh darn it, why did I say that? You can't do that. Patterson's book, our book of the month, Crucial Conversations. When you read this book, it's going to give you tools to learn how to, what she calls, master the moments that matter most. If you have ever botched a situation that really mattered, you got to read that book. If you're leading a team, if you're leading a family, if you're just leading yourself, reading Carrie's book is really going to help you sharpen the ability to communicate with people when it really counts.
Mo, before we go, do you have any final thoughts for us today?
Yeah, just one. Leaders, your leadership is going to live or die on communication. That's it. Again, I say all the time, great speakers are a dime a dozen. Great communicators are 1 in a million. You want to be a great communicator. If you want to lead well, listen first. And when you speak, you got to make it count. So grab a copy of that book. Make sure that you really sift through it and figure out, what am I doing wrong? Why am I frustrated in these situations? And I'll bet it all comes back to, you need to listen more.
Good way to kind of close. And just for those out there, okay, remember, don't forget to visit our website, rtclc.com. You guys sign up for a monthly newsletter. All of the books that we talk about, you can find, especially our book of the month, in that newsletter. So if you're not sure quite where to look for it, although I think most of us know Amazon, but if you want to help us out and use the link that we provide, we would love that. But thank you all for tuning in today and listening to us. We really appreciate all of you being a part of today's episode. If you guys enjoyed what you heard, just make sure you take a moment, you rate, review, and subscribe. We want to know if you liked it, if you didn't like it. Help us get in that algorithm. Costco, if you want to sponsor us, we are for it. Okay. We love you.
Costco pizza.
Dearly. Yes. Costco pizza, Costco sweatshirts, all of that. But until next time, make sure you guys lead with purpose, stay authentic, and make an impact.